If a pack of bloodthirsty demons are hunting you down, and their only goal is to drag you to hell, what would you do? I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the demons in Hellbound. Someone in this coffee shop is going to die. This group of friends are watching a video about a series of strange attacks that have started happening around the world. The presenter explains that before the victim is killed, they are always visited by a spirit. It will tell them exactly when they will die, and when that day comes, 3 giant monsters will arrive to take that person to hell. This guy makes fun of the presentation, insisting it's just cheap visual effects, but the group doesn't realize they're about to see something they'll never forget. Behind them, this man checks his phone and is terrified to see that it's 1:20. Suddenly, 3 giant creatures come crashing through the glass wall of the coffee shop. The executioners have come for him, and he desperately runs out of the building, scared for his life. The monsters chase the man down the street, and he tries to cut through traffic to escape, but one of the creatures jumps into the air before landing on the car in front of him. The man is surrounded on both sides with no way out. He tries crawling underneath the car, but one of the monsters drags him out from under it and swings him around, brutally torturing the man. They throw him to the ground before burning him alive as he screams in pain. They've just sent his soul to hell, and the bystanders watch in fear as the creatures run into a revolving door, disappearing without a trace. The only thing that's left of the man are his scorched bones, and this is only the beginning of a new world order. Okay, this is absolutely horrifying. These monsters look like they are totally indestructible, and they've come to send us to hell. Now, this guy obviously knew that they were coming for him at exactly 1:20 p.m. But the strange thing is that he chose a coffee shop of all places, like he was waiting for the worst Match.com date of his life. Look at this place. Its entire front wall is made out of glass, and the only things inside he could possibly use to help defend himself are these wooden chairs and tables. Now, I should say that trying to outsmart the supernatural realm is completely against all odds. These hell spirits are eternal, they know where you are, and they aren't going to stop until they get what they want. But that doesn't mean we should make it easy for them. As we saw earlier, there were already videos on the internet of how these things will attack us, and that means this guy had the information to study their methods, as well as the time to prepare for the attack. If it were me, I would research every video I could find to study how to take advantage of these guys. From what we've seen, we know that these things show up in threes, and they beat you up until you're weak enough for them to circle around you and take your soul. Now, as scary as this is, it actually exposes a huge problem with their method, because these guys brute force everything and don't use any special abilities like teleportation or stopping time. For an overpowered supernatural being, this is a pretty inefficient system, because you would think with all the power of hell at their disposal, they could do a lot better than running through streets and smashing cars. It's pretty unprofessional, but if this is what they're limited to, then it means there might be a way for us to take advantage. Since we already know the exact time they're coming for us, I would be using this time to map out the perfect obstacle course to lose their trail. Instead of a coffee shop, we could run through narrow alleyways that they're too big to fit through and use sewer drains to hide in places where they can't follow me. If we can create a series of barriers to stop them from chasing me, it's going to be a lot better than literally waiting for them to come and kill us. Now, one last thing to notice is that it also looks like these guys can only suck your soul if you aren't moving around. This seems to be a necessary part of the ritual, and they might not be able to send us to hell at all until they can form this circle. For all we know, these creatures might even have a time limit that they're allowed to be on Earth. With the information we have so far, evading capture for as long as possible is going to give us the best chance of escaping our damnation. But if running away is our only option, we should at least have fun while doing it. Genshin Impact is an open-world action RPG that you can play in multiple platforms including PC, mobile, and consoles. You can climb, swim, and fly across a world with jaw-dropping landscapes, intriguing challenges, and diverse cultures. The world of Teyvat is home to 7 elemental powers with multiple characters you can play as, each with their own unique element and combat style. And if it's getting too easy, you can also team up with friends in co-op mode, taking on challenging domains to reap huge rewards. And with the new 2.3 update called Shadows Amid Snowstorms, there are tons of new things for you to try out. Those are the 4-star archer Goro and the 5-star Oni Arataki Ito. You can head to the epic archipelago of Inazuma and fight against the new Golden Wolf Lord boss that will challenge even veteran players. Participate in 6 new events with epic rewards, and by the time you're done, you'll have everything you need to level up your party, as well as unlock 2 5-star characters that will only be available for a limited time. I'm really loving all the characters I've unlocked so far, and I'm on the way to building a snowman and getting a 4-star sword for all of my travelers. Use my link in the description to get Genshin Impact on your devices right now. Thanks Genshin Impact for sponsoring this video. That night, these police officers arrive at the crime scene and check with the investigators, asking them what they've discovered about the murder. The man tells them that besides the body, the monsters didn't leave any physical evidence, and the only thing they have are the victim's bloodstains. That's when the detective notices that across the street are members of a new religious cult called the New Truth, and all of them are listening to their chairman giving a speech about the victim. Walking over, the detectives listen to his presentation, and he warns the crowd that God is sending these monsters as a message threatening humans to stop sinning. The detectives find the group suspicious, but the man hasn't broken any laws, so Kyung here can't do anything to stop him. Later that night, this woman, Pak Jung, returns home and is surprised by her kids who wish her a happy birthday. It's a heartwarming scene, and her son takes a video to remember the occasion, but then he sees something that scares him. His mother notices the boy looking behind her and turns around to see a giant ghostly face appear. The family stares in shock at the spirit as it tells her that 5 days from now at 3 p.m. she will die and she's going straight to hell. The next day, the mother decides to meet with an attorney and explains to the woman what she saw the night before. The lawyer doesn't understand until her colleagues play a video of the birthday party showing the ghostly face damning her to hell in 5 days' time. The mother tells them she visited the religious cult to ask for help, but reveals that they made her a special offer. They would only help if she agrees to broadcast the exact moment that the monsters come for her soul, and in exchange, the chairman will pay her 3 billion won. Desperate, the mother begs the lawyers to help her kids get the money, and they decide to take her case. Okay, if there's one thing scarier than going to hell, it's not knowing what you did wrong to get there in the first place. This cult here claims to have the answers, but there's already enough information to tell us that they're not interested in answers, they're interested in power. First of all, we need to realize that as terrifying as it might seem, this whole situation is a blessing in disguise. In real life, there's nothing empirical that we can measure or quantify to prove that the afterlife exists, but these monsters have changed that completely. This situation is a scientist's dream come true because now we can use them to not only confirm that there is an afterlife, but study them to figure out what's going on. Instead of using this woman's death as a way to study the creatures, this guy wants to use it to broadcast his religious message across the country. Now, what's interesting is that it isn't hard to disprove the man, because even though we know virtually nothing about these creatures, there's still a lot of logical interpretation here that contradicts this man's theology. So let's break it down and expose him. First of all, let's take account of what this man is actually preaching. He says that all this is happening because God is sending a message to be more righteous and wants us to live holier lives. Now, there are some fundamental problems with this philosophy. The first is that we have to ask ourselves why this is happening now. It might seem counterintuitive, but it's a statistical fact that the modern world is less violent, more empathetic, and far more virtuous than it has ever been in the history of civilization. As a quick example, in the 1300s, we were literally burning women at the stake because we thought they were witches. It's difficult to understand just how brutal the ancient world was, but trust me when I tell you, if there was ever a time in human history where these hell demons would have been useful, it would have been 700 years ago, not today. With that in mind, it's incredibly illogical that this would be a message from God reminding us not to be sinful, because this is literally the best society has ever been. This isn't about sin at all, and we don't have to be philosophers to realize that the chairman here is full of shit. Faith is not a replacement for knowledge, and the man is playing to our fear as a means of gaining influence to spread his message. The next day at the police station, the investigation team has a meeting to discuss the case, when this detective hands the captain a disturbing report. They discovered that the victim's body is not made of human flesh, and the man can't believe what he's just been told. Later, the chairman is walking around a residential neighborhood, but when he turns the corner, the detective and his partner are waiting for him. The chairman has come to speak with the mother and discuss the terms of broadcasting the woman's death. The cops don't trust him, but they've got no idea how crazy this man really is. Inside the woman's home, the lawyers work out the details of the contract, and the attorney makes it clear that they need to keep her children's identities a secret. If the live stream is cancelled, then the full 3 billion won must be paid out, and the chairman agrees, but he knows something that they don't. That night, the detective arrives home and calls out to his daughter, but discovers that she's gone missing. She's been volunteering with the new religious cult, and the man suspects that they have something to do with her disappearance. In another part of the city, the chairman and the daughter are in a car spying on a man in the distance. He tells the girl that this is the person who killed her mom 6 years ago, reminding her of all the pain she suffered since then. But he wants to give her the chance for revenge. Furious, she gets out of the car and sneaks out from behind the murderer before jamming a stun gun into his neck. He's knocked out cold, and with the chairman's help, they take him to a building on the outskirts of town. The man soaks a rag in chemicals and walks over to the murderer on the slab before holding it over his face. He starts fighting back, trying to resist, but the killer can't break free and falls unconscious. The girl pushes his body into the incinerator, and the chairman closes the door on him. He then turns on the heat, burning the man alive, and watches as the girl cries, happy that the murderer is finally punished for his crimes. Okay, this is one sick dude, but he's also just made a huge mistake, because this one murder helps us realize that the chairman is hiding an important secret. It doesn't matter what his religious upbringing is, there's no way that picking someone off the street and throwing him into an incinerator isn't a sin. The interesting thing here is that the chairman actually dared to do something evil without worrying about the consequences. Now, his entire platform is based on doing good things to avoid damnation, so he would only be doing this if he already knew that nothing bad would happen to him. This is incredibly revealing, and it tells us there's a lot more that he's hiding from us. We don't know what that secret is yet, but there's already a lot of information that we can dissect to build our own theory about what these monsters are, and we don't need faith to do it. The first clue is that there's always 3 of them. This is a very strange detail, because these creatures are strong enough that they should only need one to do the job, but they're never alone. It could mean they need all 3 monsters to perform the soul-sucking ritual, and it's a huge weakness if we know how to take advantage of it. Now, we also know that there's another monster which comes to announce that you'll be sent to hell, but what's fascinating is that it suggests there's a hierarchy. The face is acting as a messenger, and the monsters are acting as soldiers to carry out the orders. Now, the reason this matters is because hierarchy means structure, and structure means there are rules, and if there are rules, then we can use them to protect ourselves. The supernatural realm should be eternal and all-powerful, which means the system that governs it has no need to change. With this in mind, we can deduce that the sudden appearance of these monsters means that they aren't a part of the natural order, but working against it. They might be rogue supernatural mercenaries who are headhunting souls and taking orders from a different authority. We also have to account for the death sentence here because each person is given a different amount of time left to live. This woman was given only 5 days, but the important question here is why they should get a warning at all. It would be much more effective to show up and drag people into hell unannounced. For an all-powerful realm, all of this adds up to an extremely inefficient method of taking souls, and it's a sign that they're working against the natural order. Several days later, the live stream is about to start, as people across Korea tune in to watch the woman get sent to hell. That's when this group of religious cultists walk onto the stage, and they all take their seats for the show. As the attorney waits nearby, her coworker reaches into his bag and suddenly hands the woman this strange package. It was sent to their firm from a mysterious source, and she's about to open it when the mother enters the room. She walks over to this chair in the center and sits down, resigned to her fate. A staff member of the New Truth cult gets everyone's attention and tells them that the broadcast is about to start. They all begin to leave the room, and the spectators across the country nervously wait to watch the prophecy come true. But when it's finally time, nothing seems to happen. The crowd doesn't know what's going on until they hear a rumbling in the distance, and the wall in front of the mother explodes as the monsters come running in. One of them grabs her, holding the woman against the wall as the crowd watches in horror. The police chief orders his men to shoot it, but they're too scared to pull the trigger. Seeing no one going in to help, the detective walks in and fires his gun at the monster, but it punches him into a wall, knocking him out. The creatures start beating the woman on live TV before taking her soul and sending it to hell. With their job done, the monsters run towards the crowd and magically disappear in front of their eyes. The cops walk into the room and see all that's left is a charred corpse, when suddenly this guy bows in front of it. Terrified, the viewers all get down on their knees to worship their new masters. The next day, the attorney opens up the package her coworker gave her and discovers a strange article about the cult's chairman. She finds out that 20 years ago, a spirit told him that he would die, and realizing the article was written by a pastor who lives in Korea, she begins to make plans to find him. Across town, the detective gets in his car to search for his daughter, but that's when the chairman suddenly calls him on the phone and tells the police officer to meet him at an orphanage. The detective doesn't trust him, but knows this is the only way he'll be able to find his daughter, and with little choice, the cop drives away to hunt him down. Okay, these people are breaking society. The fact that the police allowed a religious cult to publicly broadcast an execution is one of the most irresponsible things you could think of, but that's only scratching the surface of the problem here. Right now, everyone is on edge because we no longer understand the nature of our universe, and that creates a vacuum of power for whoever provides the most satisfying answers to explain why this is happening. There's way too much writing on this broadcast, but if this detective was thinking clearly, he would have realized that there was a much better way to take advantage of the situation. If it were me, I would forbid the New Truth cult from broadcasting these deaths because it's a platform for them to gain influence. Instead, I would suggest that the government offer a severance payment to the families of anyone who has received a death sentence and have them appear for testing. The great opportunity here is that we know these monsters are going to be summoned to wherever the victim is at the exact time of their prediction. So with the resources of the government, they would be able to create a high-tech room to evaluate as much information as possible while the victim is getting killed. From this demonstration, we learned that the monsters are essentially bulletproof, but in a controlled environment, we could test hundreds of other things to see if there was any way to stop them. We might discover that they can't be killed, but we could also try capturing them or preventing them from being able to form a circle and take more souls. We're not going to learn everything with a single demonstration, but if the victims' families are getting paid, people will be incentivized enough to help us continue running the experiment. The more times we can set up traps and run tests, the more we will learn about the monsters and eventually find the answers we need to either defeat them or prevent them from returning. That night, he arrives at the orphanage and realizing it's abandoned, he draws his gun and approaches the building. Running through the hallway, he searches all the rooms until finally he sees the chairman standing in the corner. The detective demands to know where his daughter is, and the cult leader promises the girl is safe. But that's when he reveals a massive secret that's going to change everything. 20 years ago, a spirit told him that tonight he will be sent to hell, and in 10 minutes, the monsters will come to take his soul. He lied to the New Truth cult that only people who commit sins are sent to hell. But the truth is that anyone can be chosen to go there, and it's completely random. That's when the men hear rumbling in the distance, and his time has finally come. Suddenly, monsters run into the room and shove the chairman against the wall. They beat him to a pulp, and the detective can't do nothing but watch. One of the monsters picks up the man, and they start sucking out his soul as he screams in agony. It's a horrifying sight, and the detective closes his eyes as the monsters leave the building. Later that night, he goes back home and finds his daughter waiting for him there. She walks up to him and embraces her dad, who breaks down in tears. Meanwhile, the attorney has tracked down the author of the article to this secluded cabin. Approaching the building, she cautiously knocks on the door, and a man answers, revealing himself to be Pastor Kim Jung-chi. The man welcomes her into the building, and she asks him if she still has the audio from the interview with the chairman. Without hesitating, the pastor opens up a file on his computer and plays it, as they hear the chairman admitting he would be sent to hell. Amazed, the attorney asks the pastor for a copy of the file, but he drags it into the trash and deletes it right in front of her eyes. The woman is shocked, but that's when the pastor reveals that the chairman visited him days ago and promised to make him the new cult leader in exchange for killing the lawyer. Terrified, she runs out of the cabin, but it's too late. A crowd of Arrowhead cultists are already waiting for her with weapons, and there's nothing she can do to stop them. Okay, this woman did not think this through, because if she had, she would have realized that visiting this man was way too dangerous. If a pastor wrote this article years ago, then he already knew that the chairman was going to hell. Now, the strange thing is that he hasn't spoken up about it this whole time. So it's reasonable to assume there's a chance he actually agrees with the New Truth cult. But if a bombshell like this has never seen the light of day, it's a clear sign she was walking into a trap. Now, as far as escaping these arrowheads, she doesn't have a lot to work with here. But the safest place is actually inside this man's office. The windows are barred, so it would take them a while to get in. Until then, we'd be able to call the police and wait for them to help clear the gang of arrowheads. This is a much better strategy than trying to run to her car. Now, if you think about it, this pastor was an idiot for telling her that he was going to be the new cult leader, because he's just made himself the most valuable hostage in the entire world. Once we're safely inside, I would tell this gang of arrowheads that if they don't leave, I'll kill their new leader, and that's not something even these kids would want to risk. Now, as far as the chairman here, his confession has changed everything, and it confirms that Sin has nothing to do with these monsters. If I were the detective, I would have filmed his death as a demonstration to tell the world that his cult is full of crap. It would be upsetting news to a lot of people, but allowing the cult's influence to grow is far more dangerous than the alternative. The fact that he didn't take advantage of this moment and expose the truth was very short-sighted, and it's one of the biggest mistakes in the entire series. But what's interesting is that a very similar mistake was made 28 years ago. In 1993, the police tried raiding the compound of a religious group called the Branch Davidians, run by cult leader David Koresh, with 90 of his followers inside. For 51 days, they tried to negotiate for everyone to leave the building, but instead, the man kept manipulating the police force and the media. He even convinced them to air one of his sermons on public television, just like the New Truth cult. But in the end, someone inside started a fire that killed 76 people, and the police failed. The most harmful thing about cults are not just their ideas, but the influence they have over their followers. The monsters can only take one soul at a time, but a dangerous lie can take an entire nation. That's exactly why it's better to expose this man, even if it means removing everyone's last hope of avoiding damnation. 4 years later, the members of the New Truth religion have grown more powerful over society in Korea, and people live in fear of being hunted down by the monsters for committing sins. Some people try to leave their lives early, but even in death, the demons from hell will resurrect their spirit and kill them. Baeyoung Jae here is stuck at the office and calls his wife, telling her he'll be working late tonight. She begs him to come over since their baby is in the ICU and is terrified something's going to go wrong. Her husband tells her everything will be okay, but he's got no idea that he won't be a father for much longer. Later at the hospital, his wife enters the ICU to check on their baby and pulls out her phone to take a video for her husband. She walks inside, excited to show him their kid, but the woman is horrified to find a spirit has appeared and declares that her newborn child will go to hell in 3 days. Meanwhile, the father is stuck in traffic when he gets a phone call from his co-worker's wife. The woman has no idea where her husband is and asks him for help. He promises to look for his coworker and hangs up the phone when he suddenly remembers the card on his friend's desk. It had the name of a secluded fishing spot, and the father suspects that's where he must be. He arrives at the lake and sees his friend's car parked on the road, but the man is nowhere in sight. The father goes searching and walks around the area until he finally spots his coworker sitting on a raft. He calls out to the man, startling him, and the coworker jumps into the water. The father runs over as fast as he can, but has no idea he's about to watch his friend die. Dragging his colleague back to the raft, the man begs him to explain why he's here, and his coworker finally explains that he was visited by a spirit who told him he'll be sent to hell tonight. If anyone knows this, his family name will be ruined, but his friend reassures him, explaining that the Soto law firm will help cover up his death. That's when they spot something bubbling under the surface of the lake, and the man suddenly gets dragged into the water by a monster, but the father can do nothing as his friend is taken to hell. His charred remains are tossed at the raft, and the man stares in disbelief. That's when 3 cars park nearby, and a group of men come out. They're from the Soto group, and they begin to cover up the death, dragging the father away from the shore. He demands to be let go, but stops when he hears someone call his name. He tells the father to pretend this never happened, and one of the assistants suddenly injects him with the chemical, knocking him out. Okay, this is getting interesting. The man stumbled onto a secret organization that helps people cover up their deaths, and I have to say, it's a great idea. If getting dragged to hell destroys your family's reputation, then making someone's death look like a natural cause could be a massive business. Unfortunately, these people are not doing this for the money, but if it were me, you better believe I'd be trying to figure out how to get rich off of this horrible situation. Imagine if a billionaire or a politician was visited by one of the creatures and given a death sentence. There would be so much money involved in crafting a narrative to explain their deaths to the public, we would make an absolute killing. Now, since it's been 4 years already, the public has been living with the idea that any day they could be sentenced to hell. And that's a lot of stress to deal with. But one of the most interesting things that we've learned is that even if someone decides to die before their death sentence, the monsters will literally drag their spirit back from hell just so that they can be beaten up again and sent back down. That is the most petty thing I've ever seen. But it actually reveals very interesting information. It tells us that dying and going to hell is not the same thing as being sent to hell by these monsters. If these monsters have to resurrect people to take them back to hell, then there might be 2 completely different hells with 2 different entrances. Dying takes you through the front door, but these monsters are trying to take you somewhere else, so they have to bring you back to take you into their hell. At this point, we don't know enough to confirm any of this, and there are way more questions than answers. But if we have reason to believe that these monsters aren't following the rules, then it might be something we can take advantage of once we know more. The next morning, he wakes up in his car far away from the fishing spot and realizes he's lucky to be alive. The man heads to the hospital to see his wife, and when he enters the room, the man finds her asleep. He sits down next to her when the woman suddenly wakes up, but something's wrong. Handing him her phone, he takes it and watches the video, finding out that his newborn kid has been prophesied to die. His wife tells him that the New Truth cult has never documented a case like this before, and she breaks down in tears, terrified of what's going to happen. Later that day, the father runs into his coworker's office and asks her to pull up a clip of the interview she was working on, and he sees that it's the same person he saw last night. He asks her to give him the man's phone number, and after snapping a photo of his contact details, the father runs out of the office to find him. He goes to the university where the man works as a professor and walks up to his office. The father is about to knock on the door, but gets distracted by someone coming around the corner and is suddenly pulled into the room. Inside, the professor has been waiting and asks what brought him here. They sit down to discuss the New Truth cult, and the man reveals that the church lied about why people are told they'll be sent to hell. The father then shows them the video his wife recorded of his baby's prophecy, and as they watch it, he asks them for help. The professor gets on the phone with someone and comes up with a plan, telling the father to come with them to meet his contact. That night, they drive across the city and stop at this rundown neighborhood. Walking up the staircase, they enter this abandoned building and finally meet with the professor's contact, and it's none other than the attorney. She invites the men into her office and reassures the father that they've deleted all surveillance footage of his baby being told it's going to hell, but makes it clear that the New Truth Church will try everything in their power to cover up his baby's punishment. The church teaches that only sinners are sent to hell, but this baby proves them wrong. The man asks her what her plan is, and the attorney explains she wants to broadcast the exact moment his baby is taken to hell. The man is disgusted at her suggestion and gets up to leave the room, but as he's walking away, the attorney points out that no matter what happens, his kid is going to die, so he should use it for a good cause. Okay, this is really messed up, and already the attorney is trying to use the child for propaganda, but there's one consideration here that should make the choice fairly obvious. The main problem is that if they go through the attorney's plan, this will look really bad for the Soto Group, because broadcasting the death of a baby is so much worse than broadcasting normal adults being killed. It would be one of the biggest PR disasters in history, and if the parents realized this, they probably wouldn't accept the deal. It doesn't matter if it proves the New Truth cult to be liars, all that matters is how the disturbing images will be perceived by the public. This strategy is crap, and will actually make the cult leaders look like the good guys, which makes things worse. Instead, the smarter solution is to use the time we have left to figure out how to protect the baby. Since we already know that these monsters always operate the same way, our goal should be to prevent them from reaching the baby and getting close enough to form a circle around it to take its soul. Now these things are seriously strong, but since these hell monsters have a humanoid figure, it suggests that their anatomy is limited in similar ways. If we look here, we can see that by the way it smashes this car, we can get a pretty good idea how much it's actually capable of. This car is a Kia SUV, which weighs somewhere around 3,300 pounds, and it's standard industry practice that a car's roof needs to support approximately 2 times its own weight. If this monster can smash the roof of this car in 3 hits, then he would need to be generating over 6,600 pounds of force in a single punch. That's really scary, but what's encouraging about this is that judging from his arm's windup and swing, it's fair to say that this monster really gave it all that he had to smash the car. If he's using his maximum strength, then there's a real limit to what they're capable of, and that's exactly what we need to take advantage of. With this in mind, to save my child from being bludgeoned to death and dragged to hell, I would design a 10 meter by 10 meter block of reinforced concrete with a chamber inside that's large enough to hold the parent and the child comfortably. A ventilation tube would be installed to make sure there was sufficient oxygen, as well as battery-powered lights, food, and water. When the monsters show up, they wouldn't be strong enough to punch their way through the reinforced concrete, and because of the distance and geometry of the cement cube, they can't form a circle to drag the baby's soul to hell. This would make it virtually impossible for them to accomplish their mission, and they would either have to change their tactics or quit and go back to hell without a soul. Now believe me, I know this sounds crazy, but if you're not doing everything you can to fight for the ones you love, then you don't deserve them. And if trapping my own family in a block of concrete is what it's going to take to keep us together, then that's exactly what I'm going to do. The next day, the father arrives at the office and sees his co-workers all watching a news report on the TV. 2 bodies have been found hanging at the front gate of a university, and one of them is believed to be the professor. Horrified, the man quickly walks over to his desk. He looks further into the incident and discovers that Arrowhead cultists have posted a video about the professor. Watching it, he finds out they know the man was secretly hiding people from the New Truth cult and was working with the lawyer. The husband knows their lives are in danger, and they have no choice but to go into hiding. Later that night, the attorney leads the family to an apartment complex and knocks on one of the doors. This man opens it and recognizes the lawyer, welcoming the group inside for protection. They all sit on the couch, but the attorney wastes no time and asks the mother to broadcast her baby's death. This will expose the cult's lies that only the sinful are taken, but if they don't, the church will hunt the parents down to silence them. The mother is horrified, knowing that there's nothing she can do to save her baby, and decides to move forward with the plan. The attorney starts a broadcast showing the video of the baby's death sentence. It's undeniable proof that the New Truth cult has been lying, and the attorney announces that at 9:30, they will stream the child's punishment. But none of them realize that the contact here is a cultist, and he has a secret plan for their baby. The next night, the mother walks into the courtyard and announces that soon her baby is going to be sent to hell. The other tenants start pulling out their phones and recording the moment, while the mother puts her baby down on a table to say her goodbyes. The attorney comes out of the apartment, and that's when they hear a rumble in the distance. Suddenly, 3 giant monsters land in the courtyard, and the crowd panics, backing away in fear. The demons begin running for the baby, but then the mother leaps forward and slides off the table, saving her child at the last moment. That's when her husband runs over and wraps his arms around the woman, shielding her from the demon's attacks. They go flying across the yard and land on the ground, injured but still alive. Desperately, the husband grabs her to protect their kid, and the 3 demons walk over to them, surrounding the family. The monsters begin sucking out their souls in front of everyone, and with their job done, the demons run away, disappearing without a trace. All that's left are the scorched bodies of the parents, and the attorney screams in horror. She's failed to save the family, but that's when she hears the baby crying. Somehow it survived, and the cultist walks over to the burnt bodies, seeing the infant is unharmed. He doesn't understand how this is possible, but decides to carry out his secret plan to kill the baby. Suddenly, he hears rumbling and realizes his time has come. A demon leaps out of the ground and brutally drags his body across the courtyard. The attorney watches as the monsters surround the man and send his soul to hell. Across the city, a charred corpse starts shaking in its glass box. It's Pak Jung-ja, the same woman who was killed 4 years ago in the first public demonstration, and her body slowly rebuilds itself from the ashes around the room. The woman has come back to life, and now she's here to get her revenge.
But what do you think? How would you beat Hellbound? Let me know with a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching, leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos like this. Until next time, have a damn good day.